justification for that just seems unjustified. We have noted some contradictions that occurred in the DA's report seeking to justify their use of deadly force. And part of that is their claims that Cameron had made the statement that he had a gun, and he also that they told him to get down. Well, if you looked at the transcript that we have given, it's pretty clear that even though there were a lot of statements made by the police, there is no statement at all, none, where Cameron has said that he had a gun. There's no statement at all that says to get on the ground. And so if he didn't have a gun and he didn't have a weapon, what was the basis for shooting him? They may very well have thought that he was involved in some other activity involving the mom, but that's not a basis to shoot and kill him. You have to have a lawful basis to do that. And in this particular matter, there was none. And we've looked at the videos, we looked at our recreation, and you could see he was shot a number of times, his hands up. He shot a number of times in the chest area and a number of times in the back. How can that be when a man is unarmed, has no weapons? And so it raises the real question about, was there a panicking in terms of the shooting, that they saw him suddenly and one officer shot and then the others start shooting as well? Because there wasn't one act that he engaged in that would justify the shooting. When he was, the shooting in his elbows suggested maybe his hands might have been up. Well, if his hands are up in a possible surrender, that's not a basis to shoot and kill him. Or if he made any kind of move to claim that he had went to his waist, you don't have any officers simultaneously say that he's going for a gun or he is going to his waist. These are statements that were contrived, put together later, which doesn't surprise me because you have to justify the shooting. And so what you have is this claim that he had said he had a gun as a basis, or that he moved to his waist. But think about this. Why isn't there any corroboration for any of that? So what the district attorney's office, the police want you to do is believe what they have said, but disbelieve what you in fact can hear for yourself. It was like don't believe your hearing, don't believe what you hear, believe what we tell you. Well, that cannot be as a basis to justify a civil rights violation. So obviously we have filed a lawsuit in large measure because of this, our view of the civil rights violation, not only for the failure to provide, because of the use of deadly force. There's 22 shots, okay, front and back, with no evidence at all that any shots were fired back at them, that they were the only ones doing the shooting, that they're the only ones that claim that they saw something, heard something, when there's no evidence of it. So our view is we ought not accept the official position without some corroboration. And there's no corroboration whatsoever. And that is the basis why we have taken the position that we have. The issues around medical treatment, those are issues I think that are also important. But the real basis here, from our point of view, is that the shooting itself was unjustified. There's no corroboration in the police officer's claim that he made a certain statement that he had a gun. There's no corroboration that he was on the ground before he was shot. And there's no corroboration that he in fact tried to reach for anything. The only thing we know from the tape is they told him to keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Not that he was down on the ground. They said, keep your hands up. What does that mean? Keep your hands up, which means his hands were up. And within seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, the shooting took place. So, and there's no statements made in the meantime that they saw anything. And so it seems to me it's more of a situation where one or more officers came up on him, they saw him, they made these police statements like Code 3, suggesting that an urgency matter was there. They run up on the scene, and for whatever reason, they started to shoot. Now, they may have suspected he had committed a crime, but that suspicion is not enough to justify shooting him. The mere suspicion that a crime may have been committed is not a basis. You cannot arbitrarily kill someone because you think they have committed a crime without having evidence, factual evidence, that says that their individual lives were in danger. Now, granted, the officers all said that, but you expect them to say that because you have to say something like that to justify the shooting. The question is, what facts, if any, were there that justified that? Because we know he was unarmed. We know that any statements were made. He didn't make any statements in his claim that he said, "I have a gun," which is kind of ridiculous because he walks up there, he's walking slowly. It's the police who have the verbal conversation with him. He doesn't make any, and more importantly, if you listen to the tape, a lot can be heard. It's coincidental, or is something to consider that the police officer's statements could be heard, but no statements by Cameron were heard. That would suggest to you that there was no statements. If there was no statements, then you have to raise the question about whether the shooting was justified or not. So what we have here is our concern that the district attorney's statements alleging that it was justifiable homicide is not what's significant here. What's significant to us is whether the shooting of Cameron was justified or not. And our view is there was no evidence to support the fact that he was about to place the officers in jeopardy. The only thing we know is the officers believe he may have been a suspect, but that in and of itself is not sufficient. So what I'm going to do, and we're going to do here now, is we have here in the back preliminary issues in terms of drawings that can give you some indication of why we're concerned about the number of shots that were fired in the position that he was in. We'll also have DeWitt Lacy, who will next speak, and then we'll have the daughter speak after that, and then we'll answer any questions that you may have. Okay? DeWitt?
That was John Burris.
Thank you, Mr. Burris. Again, my name is DeWitt Lacy. I am one of the attorneys in Mr. Burris's office, but the attorney who's represented the family, the Ely family, in this suit against Santa Barbara County and several named officers. Look, folks, not only is the egregiousness of the shooting of Cameron Ely reason for why we filed the suit that we have today, but the manner in which they responded to finding Valerie Ely in a circumstance where she obviously needed medical help. Some of the officers completely ignored her. As a matter of fact, they step over her as if she wasn't there. And when an officer indicates that there might be a possible stab wound to the chest, the other officer tells him and commands him, look, that's not important to us right now. That's not what we're here to deal with. And they fan out to make sure the area is secure. There's no problem with that. But what of Valerie, who is in obvious need of medical help? What should she expect from folks who we call our heroes, right? There was no medical attention given, not in the first 20 minutes, not in the first 40 minutes. As a matter of fact, even right before the circumstance where law enforcement officers confronted Cameron, they indicate that no one has even touched Valerie. Nobody's checked her pulse. Nobody's checked her breathing. Nobody's tried to find out if there's any medical care that can help save her life. As a matter of fact, when the medics are here, right outside this house on October 15th of 2019, they refused to allow the medics inside to make an examination of Valerie to find out her well-being, a woman who suffered from a stab wound to her lung. Certainly, it's a devastating wound, but one that someone can live for quite some time if they receive appropriate medical help, which was not rendered. They left Valerie's body here overnight. They left Cameron's body here overnight outside. It is one of the most egregious displays, in my mind, of malfeasance that a law enforcement can make. And for far too long, it has been thought that these are problems that only exist in the black community or in brown communities, right? But I'm here to tell you today that this is an American problem and one that we all have to join together to do something about. Yes, we expect that these officers will be held accountable. Yes, we hope that the DA will actually do an appropriate look at the objective evidence and make sure that they do the right thing, not only to honor the lives of Valerie and Cameron, but all those who are similarly situated. Okay? Right now, we have an illustration, a biomechanical illustration that's been done by Scott Roeder of the evidence room, and we want to demonstrate that to you. It shows the pathway and trajectory of some of the bodies. Now, because the coroner's department did not appropriately probe the trajectory of the bullet wounds, we cannot be 100% certain, okay, right now. However, we have a great matter of certainty that these are actually the trajectory of the wounds, given what the DA has reported and what the coroner has reported in the autopsy report, okay? And as you can see, there are several wounds. I'll move out of the way here. That could have only come while Cameron was lying down. As a matter of fact, we count about 15 of the shots that come from the rear and to the back of Cameron Ely, mostly while he's lying on the ground. We argue not as a threat. We argue not as someone who's charging law enforcement. We argue not as someone who's displayed any weapons or any manner of violence towards law enforcement. It's somebody who may have indeed been in need of help himself. But the reason why we don't have the answers is because law enforcement didn't take the time to do their job appropriately. And so we are here today, okay? Scott, do you have something that you want to add about the biomechanical?
Sure. Real quickly.
Yeah.
One of the things regarding the biomechanics of the bullet trajectory is that the shots happened, 22 shots happened in 3 seconds. And the bullet trajectories cover 360 degrees of the body. The front, left lateral, right lateral, and the back. And if Cameron was moving, like the DA says, toward the police to present some sort of a threat, there's not, and the officers were in fact, like they said, they were standing side by side by side by side in a line, that would be impossible to achieve the bullet trajectory that we see here. So what the evidence is indicating is that they have not been truthful in their recitation of the shooting events that night. You cannot be shot on 360 degrees of your body in under 3 seconds if all the shooters are standing in one position. So what does that mean? That means that they were deceitful in where they said they were standing at the time they discharged their weapon. They were most likely surrounding him in some degree to achieve this bullet trajectory in under 3 seconds. And you know, once we get more information, the investigation will continue. We need to see where the ejected shell casings were. We need to see each officer's ammunition to see how many times each officer discharged their weapon. We need gunshot residue testing so we can do bullet to muzzle to target distance determination, as well as a second autopsy examination to determine the actual bullet paths and intersecting anatomy to associate exit wounds with entrance wounds, and that ultimately will give us the truth, hopefully, at the end of the day. But that's what I'd like to add to that.
Thanks, Scott.